April 13th, the little resort and railroad town of Keddie in remote Plumas County hit the headlines. The county awoke with horror that Monday morning. There had been committed there a crime so bizarre it should have happened in the big city. Indeed, it was the reason most Keddie residents had moved to the country to escape crime. On that spring day, then Plumas County Sheriff Doug Thomas found the bodies of 36-year-old Glenna Sharp, her 16-year-old son John, his 17-year-old friend Dana Wingate. They had been knifed and claw-hammered to death.
November 1980 is when we moved into Keddie in a small cabin, which was number 28. Rick Gregg slept in one room. My mom, Tina, and I slept in another room. And Johnny, there was a basement downstairs, and since he was the eldest, he got to sleep down there. Johnny had scruffy blonde, I think dirty blonde hair. He had blue eyes, and he was small like the rest of us, but don't get me wrong, he made up in that he was very, very feisty. And I think that night, that's what happened to him, is he was defending the family, which he would do at any cost. He always stuck up for me at school or wherever for any of us. And I think that's what happened that night, is he was defending Mom and Tina and the rest of the family.
The scene was horrible beyond belief as Sheila Sharp looked through the window of her mother's house in Keddie, California. Inside on the living room floor lay the corpses of her mother, her brother, and his friend. All had been tortured and viciously murdered. The bodies remained bound and gagged. Dead were 36-year-old Glenna Sharp, the mother of 5. Her son, 15-year-old John Sharp, a student at Quincy High School. His friend from school, 17-year-old Dana Wingate. No one is quite sure what happened on that April night in 1981, but police investigators believe the 2 boys may have been picked up by the suspects as they hitchhiked home from Quincy, 7 miles away.
The 2 boys were laying prone on the floor and had been tied up, and then on the couch was Sue.
The mother was the type who had a lot of men friends, constant comings and goings, as I understand it. You know, everyone knew that the family was on welfare, and in those days that was not a popular thing to have happen to you here in Plumas County. And so you immediately had sort of a stigmatism attached to you. You know, there were a lot of rumors at the time about, you know, my gosh, the way she deals drugs, it could be anybody. You know, it could have been a big drug party that got out of hand. Some of the rumors dealt with her sleeping with various men for money.
My aunt, when she was murdered, was my age now. And she was a single mother of 5 children. And she had 2 teenagers, a preteen, and then 2 small boys. And she uprooted her family, moved here to be near family, my dad, and try to make the best of what she could with the skills she had.
I didn't feel any better about Sue then because I just felt like I was very judgmental and thought she should have been a better mother. And I wouldn't let my kids go over there, but I was welcoming her kids over to our house and wanted them to be there and be safe. But the night it happened, they wanted Paula to stay the night, and I wouldn't let her stay. And I just felt like my kids didn't belong over there.
My aunt, of all people, my cousin, Johnny, my Aunt Sue, Dana, and Tina, they were nobody. They weren't people that were harassing the shopkeepers in Quincy. I don't believe they were the neighbors that were creating discontent amongst the neighborhood. They kept to themselves. Nobody knew them. They weren't notorious. Yet, out of the blue, those 4 people were murdered in this town.
It changed the face of Plumas County because nothing had ever happened before. And because nothing like that had ever happened before, it made people a little scared and a little suspicious. And I've been here 30 years, and after that happened, I don't pick up hitchhikers anymore unless I know them.
My mom's still sending me articles in the paper she sees about the Keddie murders. It was a real upset up here, and everyone still feels bad about the whole situation. And I can't believe she still, every time she sees something in the paper, she'll send me up an article about it. And would like to get to the bottom of this one, you know.
It made the area just less innocent than it was before. It was like nothing was ever the same after that.
It didn't just affect Keddie, it affected all of Quincy, all of our county, because who would have thought that something this horrific could have happened in a small mountain community like this. It's God's country.
Dana, you know, he was born prematurely. I believe, you know, my memory sets me right. I think 7.5 months. Right from the start, you know, we had troubles physically with him, and that carried on through his years, even as becoming a teenager. Through those years of Dana, you know, and the whole family, I worked a lot, you know, and so it was a joke that none of my kids knew me. Who's that? No, that's your father.
We used to take Dana and dress him up in Renee's clothes, and he had longer hair because that was the style back then. And we would braid up his hair and put makeup on him. And my dad would get so mad because there was 3 girls and 1 boy, so he wanted his son. And we would try to make him look like us. And then we'd say, go, smile, Peaches, smile. And then we would all laugh, and he was just precious.
Dana was, I think, more and more, he felt the distance, you know, and he became more and more interested in being outside of the family, you know, staying away. And my girls are always staying at home, and he, as I look back at it, you know, he was spending more time out of the house with friends and all that.
My wife and I operated a receiving home for the county of Plumas. During the time that we were there, Dana Wingate became one of our clients. Living in the group home, Dana had the responsibility of keeping my wife and I informed of where he was at all times. So true to his responsibility, he came to the house on the afternoon of the terrible incident that occurred, and he and Johnny asked if Dana could go to Johnny's that evening and spend the night. And with the proviso, my wife insisted that they not hitchhike down to the 7 miles to Keddie. But as we know now, that's exactly what they ended up doing. The next morning, at about 10 o'clock in the morning or so, we got a call from the police, and they asked us to come to the mortuary to identify a body. And we went down, and they were very nice to us, told us what to expect, and we went in, and much to our dismay, the body was that of Dana.
I believe it was something to do with the mother. I believe that. I mean, to be that brutal with these people, you know, something was going on.
Even though this event happened over 20 years ago, Dana has been with me and with the rest of my family and with the other kids that were in that home. During that entire time, I've talked to some of the others, and they recall what they feel about Dana. And there just is no end to this. It goes on and on and on. We don't feel like we have to quit living or live in that past, but it's always with us.
When I went over to Alicia's that night, to spend the night, I didn't know where Tina was. She could have been outside playing or, you know, at the house. Who knows at this time. I do know that she wanted to spend the night, but Alicia and I wanted it just to be the older girls, nobody else. You know, we were being stingy, I guess.
I remember Tina and Sheila coming over, and Sheila was going to stay all night with my daughter Elisa. And Tina wanted to stay, and she stayed every Saturday night, and so I just thought it would be really nice if Sheila stayed by herself that night.
Tina was just beautiful. She had blonde hair that was kind of shoulder length and kind of unkept, but it looked good. You know, it was kind of like she was a free spirit, if you will. She had these incredible, huge blue eyes that kind of overpowered her whole self. I mean, that's what captured you when you looked at her. You didn't see really her hair or anything like that. You were just captivated by her eyes.
I remember Tina as being a little bit slow. At school, she was in special education classes, and that's all I can relate to her being slow, because she was a normal kid to me.
As a student, Tina was not at grade level. She was in a special ed class and getting extra help. I would help her one-on-one, but she really didn't get the help that she needed at home. She was struggling with everything, but she was one of the sweetest, nicest little girls I think I've ever had.
When I walked in the house that morning, what I saw was a person right at the door with their hands and feet tied. I dropped all my, I guess I had sleeping bag, clothes right there, and ran back to the Seabolts where I was staying the night before.
She was back in just a few minutes, and she was just screaming and crying hysterically. She says, "My God, there's 3 dead people in my house." And she didn't know who they were. And I ran across the street to the, we didn't have a phone, and I ran across to the people that owned the house, owned Keddie at the time, and I had them call the sheriff.
One of the things I did see as well was a knife, which I thought at the time was a pocket knife, and come to find out it was a bent steak knife that they had used on, I don't know if all of them or one of them. After the police were called, we then ran back next to my house to the side window where Rick, Greg, and Justin were sleeping, and got them out through the window. I did not want them to see what I saw, and who knows if somebody else was still in the house at the time.
Apparently the bodies are pretty hard to tell who's, they were bashed in so bad or something to that effect. What amazes me is that the kids sleeping in the bedroom didn't hear a thing. How can that be?
There's a very good chance that I had witnessed something, whether it be the crime itself or the aftermath. The morning after the crime had occurred, after the police arrived, I was being interviewed by Doug Thomas, and he conducted the interview inside of his patrol car, probably because it was raining out and we didn't want to be exposed to the elements. I had made several remarks in reference to where is Tina? Tina's missing. And the sheriff or the detective was not acknowledging any of the statements that I was saying, and he actually had to be interrupted by my mother and told, "Will you be quiet for a moment and listen to what this boy is telling you? He is telling you that Tina is missing."
What Justin was saying was, "No, that is not Tina in there. That's Sue in there. And to go look for Tina. Tina's missing." He kept saying that over and over. Tina's missing.
We're trying to locate Tina. We believe that she's an integral part of this and that she may be the clue that we're looking for. She's a girl of 12 years of age with shoulder-length hair. It's dark blonde in color, and she has light blue eyes. She's very slightly built, and one would maybe mistake her for a 9-year-old.
Are you going on the assumption that she has been kidnapped or run away?
Well, we know that she was in the residence, and at this point we have to go into the assumption that the assailant or assailants took her with them.
I just assumed that somebody took her because she was so pretty, and that they just wanted her to be their own. I mean, I had no idea at that time. I was so naive that anything horrible could happen, but I just figured, they wanted her so badly that they would do anything to have her.
When the Keddie murders happened, Tina was not found. They didn't know where she was. And I went out looking for her. I always thought that if she were alive, she would come to me. She knew where I lived. She knew I cared about her. And she never came. So I was out tramping around in the mountains, and I'd get in my car and I'd go down the canyon, and I'd go into all the little roads and streets roads down there, just seeing if I could find something. I still can't go down the canyon without thinking about Tina.
For Plumas County, the Keddie murders were indeed a shock. After all, this county only has 17,000 people, only 33 sworn officers, and at one point, 1/5 of those investigators were working on the Keddie murder and kidnap.
Politics played a big role in the whole thing. We had a sheriff that was trying to make probably more of a name for himself, and rather than relying on the expertise of the Department of Justice when it first started out, he tried to do things himself, and I think hurt the case quite a bit.
We collected evidence from throughout the room and from throughout the house, actually. Anything that we could believe that had a connection with the homicides. We even tore some panels off the wall because there was blood there. And then all of that was sent to the Department of Justice in Sacramento for analyzation.
The most kind of strange thing for me was that the walls, forward and backward of that room, had knife marks, like somebody had been throwing a knife, trying to stick it in the wall.
At the time, I had been using hypnosis. I'd gone to 2 different training sessions to learn hypnosis to get recall from witnesses. We took Justin and put him under hypnosis, and under hypnosis, Justin didn't actually say that he saw anything, but he described watching Love Boat, and then in detail talked about a fight, and talked about Sue, and talked about at the end that Sue was thrown overboard.
I had indicated body placements, which were, from what I understand, very close to being correct, if not correct.
He heard the loud noises, the scuffles, the noises that were being made in the living room, and that he was probably peeking out from behind the bedroom door.
Police artists have drawn these composite sketches of the 2 suspects. If you know anything about these murders or recognize the men in these drawings, call 1-800-78-CRIME. Help put these men behind bars. They are 2 of California's most wanted.
When I saw the composites, I did see my ex-husband in those composites, as well as a man that he had met over in the VA mental hospital.
No, these are the pictures that came out in the newspaper of the people they thought had done the murder or committed the murder. And we had noticed that if you took the top half of one guy and put it with the bottom half of the other guy's face, and it was almost a carbon copy of Bo and Marty. And this is what it would look like on one, and kind of like that on the other one.
That would look like Marty.
Mm-hmm.
Martin Smart lived just around the corner, like maybe 3 houses away, 2 to 3 houses, but just around the corner. And Bo was a friend of his, and it's my understanding that they had met at the VA hospital and developed a friendship. And of course, the night of the homicide, they had visited the bar in the hotel, and people just were suspicious of them.
He wanted to stop in and see if Sue would go down to the lounge with us. And I tried to tell him no, that she wouldn't go. She doesn't drink. She's not that way. And he said, well, Bo needs a partner. And I said, well, she won't go. And he insisted, you go and talk, you go ask her. And so I said, well, okay, I'll go ask her. But she won't go. And I did. I went and asked, and she didn't want to go. And so they were both upset about that. I did wake up. It was Oh, it had to have been probably 2 in the morning or so. And I heard noise, and I did get up, and I went to the bedroom door, and I saw them burning something in the wood stove.
Well, Marty had went to Reno the day after the murder, and he come home about 5, 6 o'clock. It was in the afternoon, and he was real high on something, and he kept saying, well, I got to go to Keddie. I got to go to Keddie. And I'd say, Marty, you don't need to go to Keddie. Somebody's out there killing somebody, and you don't need to be going. And he says, well, I got to go. And he was walking up and down the room, up and down the room. He says, I got to go. There's something I got to finish, something I started that had to be finished. I've got to go finish it. And I kept arguing with him and saying, Marty, you don't need to go. I'll take you in the morning. But he kept saying that over and over. I got to go back. I got to go there. Something I got to finish. Something I started. Something I got to finish. I have to go. And I finally talked to him about 9 o'clock at night. I talked him into staying. He says, okay. He said, I'll stay. But all that evening, he was just like a caged animal, walking up and down, and repeating himself. And sometime, about 4 o'clock in the morning, he got up and left. And he went, I guess, to Keddie.
And what do you think he might have been, why do you think he needed to go down there?
Well, I think that maybe he knew where Tina was. I think that maybe he left some evidence there that he had to get rid of.
We went to the Smart residence and, with their permission, searched the residence in an outbuilding, looking for any kind of clues that might, connect them to the crime. And then Department of Justice had some agents assigned to the case, and they extensively interviewed both Bo and Martin, and then myself and Ken Shanks, we interviewed them. We went to great detail to make sure in our own minds that they were not involved.
They were going through the cupboards. Marty was a chef, and he had all kinds of knives and so forth. They found, I guess they found like duct tape. They found his knives and stuff. I think one was missing or something. They found a hangman's noose that was way up on top. They found Hustler magazines that I didn't even know existed. They found a jacket down under the house that belonged to Tina that had some blood on it. They also found the kids had, there was a little shack just up the road and from our cabin, and the kids had a little clubhouse type thing in there. And the police, when I went out to get some clothing, the detectives and the sheriff, some deputies that met me out there, and we went up to the clubhouse, and I noticed something that I know wasn't like that before, and I questioned whether Tina might have been held there because the floorboards were torn up. And I know the kids didn't do it. We asked. And it wasn't like that when I had been out there that weekend. But the floorboard was tore up, and we kind of wonder if maybe that's where Tina had been.
Marty was always calling on the phone with little tidbits of information. Normally they were things that were designed to throw the suspicion somewhere else. Yeah, there were several things that brought some suspicion to Tina. The fact that the wires that were used to tie the boys came from Tina's bedroom. Of course, she shared that with Sue. And then in doing an examination of everything in the house, we learned that a shoebox that had been made as a school project was missing from the kitchen. And we found that really strange. There was nothing else really missing from the house other than that shoebox. And we learned that Tina had a real liking or a fixation on that tool or that shoebox, and we just assumed that when she left, that shoebox went with her. And to my knowledge, that shoebox has never been recovered.
I believe it to be approximately 2 days after the crime occurred. I was talking to my brother, and this is a story that my mother tells me. I was speaking with my brother, and I was telling him some details, or talking, not details, I was talking to him about the crime.
Casey and Justin were playing on the floor. I remember that. I don't remember what day. It was just right after it, though. And I caught Justin saying, "No, Casey, you have to do it this way." And he was having Casey stab him. He said, "'Cause I have to stop your arm." And so Casey was supposed to try and stab him, and then he would grab his arm to stop him. And then I couldn't believe what I was seeing, and Justin was saying, "I have to protect Sue, I have to protect Sue." And then Marty, he grabbed Justin, and he jerked him up, and he said, "You will never talk about this again, ever." And he took him outside, and I don't know what was said to Justin outside. But Justin didn't talk about it again. After Marty threatened him is when he shut everything down. Up to that point, he was talking to Doug. But then when I think Marty caused him to forget, because we are almost certain he knew that Tina was gone. He knew she was missing. He knew that the female out there was Sue. He knew that it was Johnny. He knew that it was Dana. All of the blood, the glass, all of that. He could describe all that stuff. So either he walked to the scene after the fact, or he could have been standing. The way it was situated, he could have been standing in the little hall next to the doorway and could have seen it all. Tina would have had to come all the way down the hall where he would, and his tennis shoes. They took his tennis shoes, and they told me that there was evidence that he had walked through the scene on those tennis shoes. We don't know what happened to those tennis shoes.
The Keddie homicide has always been an important case as far as I was concerned, that didn't get as much attention as I think it should have.
How I found out about Tina was my kids went to church and they found out about it at church. And just as soon as they could get to a telephone, they called me and told me what had happened.
We were on a trip with my youth group in California when my foster dad, who was also one of the youth leaders, took myself and my cousins aside and informed me that they found Tina. And at that time we were, I got all excited. Well, where is she? Can we see her now? And come to find out, she was dead.
The condition of her body at the time that was discovered left very little for us to use to determine, what may or may not have happened to her. There were some skeletal remains, and that was it. and those didn't produce anything like knife cuts on the bones or crushed in skull or something like that. None of that was present. So still today, I don't think we can honestly say what she actually died from.
Who was she? Who was Tina? She was an 11, 12-year-old girl who lived here in Keddie, California for a very short time and attended school in Quincy. That was, I mean, there's 12 years of history here somewhere. There's a little girl who had a life before she was murdered.
I did go back to Quincy in the late 80s to visit some friends, and then I also at that time went and visited my mom and everybody's grave. And I noticed at that time Tina had a little tin plaque. It disappointed me greatly knowing that Mom and Johnny had a decent one, but Tina didn't, and there was nothing I could do at that time to fix it. Is it on? First of all, thanks everybody for coming to this. It has been a long time coming for Tina. Tina, as you guys can tell, she's our little angel. She has always, I know, looked over us and our family, helped us get where we are today. And this is also to help Tina put her at rest. She didn't have this. She was a joy. I miss her. She was my best friend. I miss my sister. And I want everybody to know that she's well loved and she's in our hearts. She always will be. She's looking over us and in our prayers. Thank you again, everybody.
I don't know that I have a whole bunch to say, but Sue was her name is Glenna, and mine is too. That was odd anyway, but she was called Sue, and I was her best friend, and all my children and all her children were like brothers and sisters. They lived at my house or her house, and Tina and all of them. And Johnny was my boy's best friend. It was like one of my own children, and so was Sheila. And Sheila and I have a special bond because Sheila has a daughter named Melissa. She's here somewhere. And that is also my granddaughter. And unfortunately, I didn't meet her until today. So anyway, it happened a long, long time ago. And you know, the image kind of drifts out of your mind, but you don't ever forget. Never. And all the horror that child must have went through, and I'm glad they found her, and I'm glad it's coming to a closure.
Duncan, we've kind of moved it a little bit, and I think you've seen it before. But the timeline pretty much starts here with, look at the date that it actually starts. It even has stuff mentioned from June of 1980, and then starts working through with, some of victims involved and other, people that could be involved, to where it reaches, let me find it, the time that the homicide occurs, and then some of the investigation that was done afterwards. And
now, where would it start back in June?
I think just some information they got while the investigation was going on that just may kind of set the stage for certain things or possibilities.
When they released him from jail, he was told not to come around the Meeks' house, not to notify me. He was told basically, get out of town. I've got to back up a little bit. My daughter was living with us for a while. She was terrified of him, and I didn't know this. But she ran away. And she went back up to Oregon with her stepmother because of him. And after all this happened, she received a phone call up there, and she does not know who called her. But it was the same night that, the next night after it happened, she received a phone call up there telling her that she could be next if she didn't keep her mouth shut, which scared her to death. She has no idea who it was that called, because at that point they didn't even know anything about it up there. I received a postcard, and this was many months later, like 6, 7 months later. I received a postcard saying, all it said was, Bo is dead. Marty. That's all it said. I don't know how he died. I know that it came from Portland, Oregon. I'm assuming that's where they were at.
It's just the idea that at least 2 people committed this crime. And it's just bothersome to know that they're still not apprehended, that they're still out there. If they were capable of committing such a heinous crime in 81, like you say, 22 years ago, it's just amazing that they haven't committed some other ones since then.